Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 13th official CJ Sports Network podcast. Today, I am joined by NBC Sports reporter Kevin Levine. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, CJ. Thanks for having me.
Great. I have a little Kickstarter question for you. Do you like snowboarding or skiing better?
Snowboarding. So I actually just picked it up this past year.
Same here.
So I had never done any winter sports before then. And so I got up to Montana a few years ago, and I'm like, okay, I need to pick up a winter sport, but I couldn't because at the time I was still recovering from knee surgery. I'd actually blown out my knee. I had dislocated it. Torn the ACL, MCL, and both meniscus. The back of the knee hit the kneecap and left a dent in my kneecap. And so when I got here, I couldn't walk. And so it took me a full year of recovery before I could do any winter sports. And by the time I was coming around to it, I was looking at skiing and I was looking at all the ACL and MCL injuries with skiing. And I'm like, I guess snowboarding's for me. So I took up snowboarding and I surprisingly loved it. It burns my thighs because I'm still kind of recovering from that injury. And my hammies and my thighs are never going to quite be the same, but it's a lot of fun.
Have you ever tried skiing at least?
No, and so I never did winter sports growing up. And then, I blew out my knee, and so I'm scared, to be honest, to go skiing, and I just don't want to blow out my knee again. So I'm going to stick to snowboarding. I like it enough. It's a good enough winter sport for me that I don't have any interest in getting into skiing.
Was it hard learning it? Did you take any nasty spills?
Oh, God. So went up to Lookout, and I had, the 3-day pass where you could, go and have a lesson for 3 days. And it was a little rough, not going to lie. Little rough learning to snowboard, but I have some experience surfing. And so that kind of helped me out a little bit. But I remember picking up some speed the first time I was going down the mountain instead of the bunny hill. And I caught an edge. Oh. And I did a full front flip and landed face down in the snow. Some wind knocked out of me in the middle of the mountain. I'm just laying there on my back.
Running around you?
Exactly. I can't breathe. I'm like, my buddy comes up to me. He's like, dude, we gotta get you off to the side at least. And I'm like, and that gave me a heavy respect, for the snowboard. I've taken it a little slower since then.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should get right into it. So, why are you on TV instead of being a radio person, PR, something managing social media, or anything other than just being on TV?
So that's a great question, CJ. And for me, it was all about the storytelling. So I consider myself a storyteller first and foremost. I love getting out and talking to people and learning their stories and what makes them unique. And so something that people really don't know about me is I actually have a psychology degree. And so learning about people and the inner mechanisms of what makes them tick is something that has always fascinated me. And being able to tell those stories, I felt my best medium to tell those stories was on TV. Being able to show people what I was seeing and give people their chance to explain themselves and their stories in their own words rather than PR where I'm kind of managing their story, or newspaper where I'm writing it down and people are reading it. When you're reading it, I've always felt that you couldn't get the same interaction that you could get when you could see somebody and see their emotion and see their face. And that's why, I always preferred that TV was the best medium for my storytelling abilities.
Have you ever tried at least being PR or trying newspaper?
Yeah, when I was in college, I did it all. So I did some newspaper work, I did some radio work. PR not so much. We consider that in journalism to be the dark side. Once you go over to the dark side, you can't turn back. And there's been days I've been tempted. This industry's frustrating. It's a lot less stressful, and you make some better money. But maybe one day, but not yet. I haven't gotten into PR yet. But I've tried most of the other ones. Magazine journalism was a really fun one for me because it gave me that chance to kind of go back to storytelling long form, get a lot more inches than you do in newspaper. So I did enjoy that. If I could get a job in a magazine, I'd really enjoy it. The issue is the magazine industry is dying worse than the television one is.
And you said the dark side. What makes it the dark side?
That's a great question. It's really just kind of a term we use in journalism because as a journalist, one of your things is you're trying to bring light to stories, right? You're trying to kind of inform the public, give the public the best view of what's really going on. PR, you're really trying to hide what's going on. You're trying to hide the negative stories and promote just the positive stories. And again, that's what you get paid to do. That's your job for a business, for a company, for a sports team, whatever you're the PR management for. But it's a bit of the dark side that you're no longer trying to bring light to stories. You're trying to keep them in the dark. And that's kind of why we call it the dark side.
What's your biggest TV blooper? Being on TV? I know you probably had a lot of them.
Oh, gosh. Does high school count? I had a really bad one on my high school television production stage studio. So I went to an arts high school, and I was anchoring the morning announcements. We had a pretty involved morning announcements. I mean, it was like a half-an-hour television show, which was really cool. But, oh, God. And I was promoting a piano concert for one of our students at the art school. And a piano artist is called a pianist.
Oh gosh, I can see where this is going.
You know where I don't even have to say it. I had a Freudian slip, and I'm gonna leave it at that, CJ.
Yeah, I can see where that was going.
Hey, it happens to everybody. If you're on TV long enough, things happen to everybody, and you just have to roll with the punches at some point.
Speaking of the TV, when did you first realize that you wanted to be a sports reporter?
When I realized I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. I think we all kind of have that moment where growing up loving sports, it's like, oh, I'm going to get paid money to play sports, duh. And then you have that moment that you're like, no, I'm not. And I had it fairly young. I had it in 5th or 6th grade where I always realized I was like the 2nd or 3rd best player on the field. I was good. But I'm looking around and I'm like, yeah, I'm not great. And so I never wanted to leave sports. I figured, love what you do, right? Love what you do, you never work a day. And so I was like, well, if I can't play sports, the next best thing's being right over there on the sideline. And so that's kind of what drew me into sports reporting, and being on TV was, the idea I could stay kind of in the sports realm.
What was your favorite sport? What sport were you the best at, and you felt like you were the leader of it?
Mainly, I played a little bit of everything growing up. I played quarterback growing up before I got to high school. I played first base in baseball, but my main 2 sports were really tennis and basketball growing up. And surprisingly, a lot of great tennis players and basketball players played the other sport. I don't know why, but like Andy Roddick and Marty Fish, 2 of the great American tennis players, both played high school basketball at a high level, could have gone to college. And those were really my main sports. Tennis probably even more so. As much as I love basketball, I've coached here and there tennis. I coached in Missoula a little bit with Parks and Rec. I worked with the University of Missouri women's tennis team when I was in college. That's really been, it's just the sport I understand best. It's the one that kind of naturally comes to me.
What was your biggest blooper in basketball? Because you said that you were the best at it. What was your biggest, blooper, I would say?
I had a few. I was not the most talented. I was pretty smart, but I had some dumb moments. And the worst was I was the inbounder, and I was in high school. It was probably my junior or senior year, and the team we were playing was running a press, and I'm running the baseline trying to find an opening, and one of my teammates takes off, he's wide open for a layup, and I take a baseball-style pass and just fire it. And I didn't realize where I was. I was actually underneath my own basket. It hit off the backside of the backboard, hit the wall behind me, and hit me in the back of the head.
Oh.
So that would do it. That would have made SportsCenter's not top 10 plays if we had a camera there. Thank God we didn't. So.
What is it like being on TV?
At first, it's nerve-wracking. The first time you do it, it's like, oh my God, don't mess up. And you're speaking in a monotone voice. But the more you're on TV, the more comfortable it gets. You just get to have some personality. You get to kind of connect with viewers and get to connect with people in a way that you don't in other mediums and you don't in other jobs. And it's really kind of cool having that kind of influence where, I get to tell these stories of people, and I get to kind of show people stories and show the highlights of these awesome athletes that I work with, and that's a really cool responsibility.
Going off the TV part, what was it like having the Missoula Ospreys change their name to the Paddleheads? What were your opinions on that? It's going to be a hot topic.
I think I have a hot take on that one. I loved it. So I thought, the Osprey was a cool name, but it wasn't a very minor league baseball name, right?
Or creative, really.
It was creative because they had the Osprey in center field. But without the Osprey, if you take that away, it was just a baseball name. And I was looking around at all these other baseball names, minor league baseball names. I have a buddy who works in Binghamton. and he was a sports reporter there, and I don't know if you know the name of the Binghamton minor league team.
No.
They're the Rumble Ponies. How great's that? And, there's the Albuquerque Isotopes, and there's the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimps, and there's the Lafayette Baby Cakes? There's the Baby Cakes somewhere, there's just so many great, unique minor league team names, and the minor league baseball is about having fun. It's about going to the ballpark and having a good time. And I really think the Paddleheads fit right in there. I mean, they won the best rebrand for Major League Baseball this year. And I don't think enough people realize that. I mean, it was a great rebrand. The connection to the community. And so I was talking with Tom Ellis, the vice president of the Paddleheads now. And he's been part of this organization since they became the Osprey. He was part of that Osprey notice. And so changing from the Osprey, he wasn't sold on it in the beginning. But as they got more into this process, I was talking with him, and he's like, Kevin, we're gonna really do this great, and they have. And so the funniest part here is they were in a meeting downtown with the final 5 names. So they have the final 5 names this past March.
Do you know what they were?
I don't know what the 5 were. I wish I did, because I'm really curious. I might ask him that in a year or two when he might be able to tell me. But so they have the final 5 names, and they have everybody in their downtown office off of Higgins. You know the MSO hub? Mm-hmm. So that's where they're sitting. And they get a push notification from NBC Montana, ironically, and they that there's a moose downtown. Do you remember when there's the moose in Missoula?
Yes.
Moose on the loose in Missoula. And as they get the notification, they are talking about the Paddlehead's name, and they all love the name, except Tom is talking about how, and get this, he's like, yeah, I like the name, but there's never been a moose in Missoula.
Oh,
Literally
gosh.
60 seconds later, they get the notification that there's a moose loose in Missoula, and it sold the deal. It sold it. Once you say there's never been a moose in Missoula.
And then there's a moose in Missoula.
It sold it. They didn't even talk about the other names, and that was the moment it was the Paddleheads. That was it.
Speaking on teams, what's the biggest blowout you've seen? It could be high school, any sport, baseball.
Oh.
But just in Montana and a school sport. I want to see what was the worst performance.
There's some really bad 8-man
The baseball
scores.
fire.
I'm sure there's been a few 70-0 games in 8-man.
Ooh, gosh.
I haven't been to any of them. Oh no, the biggest blowout I saw was actually probably just a couple weeks ago. Sentinel Hellgate football was 50-0 at halftime.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it was.
What's the final score?
I don't even remember. They called off the Dogs at halftime, but they scored 50 in the first half. They could have scored 100 that game if they wanted to.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It was ugly. It was really ugly.
What is your favorite winter drink? As Montana just got hit by a early winter.
That's a great question. I'm not really much of a hot drinks guy. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink tea. Don't really drink hot coffee all that often either. I don't do hot toddies. I don't like my drinks hot, so I don't really have a winter drink.
You're not a coffee?
No, I'm not a coffee guy or tea guy. I grew up in South Florida, so hot drinks were kind of an oxymoron there. You didn't really need them because it was warm all the time, so I just always drank cold drinks.
So I'm guessing you're more of an ice cream fan than you are anything else?
Yeah, I nice ice cream on a hot day is always great. That was a South Florida delicacy.
What's your favorite ice cream shop?
In Missoula?
Sure.
Are we talking nationwide? Because there's the one down in South Florida. It's called Jeremiah's.
Sure.
Oh my God,
We can talk about both.
So in Missoula, I definitely fall in the oh my God, CJ, I'm drawing a blank. Not Sweet Peaks, the other one. What's the other one? The walk-up place.
I don't know if it's Cold Stone or what.
No. It's hold on. That's why we have iPhones.
Yeah.
Big Dipper. I'm a
Big Dipper.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a Big Dipper fan.
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
I don't love the ice cream, to be honest. But I love the waffle cones. And I'm not a waffle cones fan, but I love the waffle cones.
I'm the exact opposite. I usually don't eat the cones. I just get it in the little bowl.
So normally, that's what I do. I don't normally get the cones. I'm not an ice cream cone fan, but I love the waffle cones there.
Going on to a kind of a weird side tangent. Have you ever dipped your popcorn in any sort of drink?
I don't eat popcorn, CJ.
Oh, God.
I'm not much of a snack guy. I don't like popcorn. It just gets stuck in my teeth a little too much.
Oh, I can see that.
It's never been, especially I grew up with braces for a couple years, and it was just, it was just never my favorite.
What do you do? What do you eat at the movies then? Going to a movie with friends?
I don't really eat anything at the movie. I'm just because I always buy like a snack or something, and it's gone before the previews are over, and then I just feel like I wasted my money. So I'm more of a I'll just watch the movie guy.
What is it like getting early snow? I mean, you said you tried snowboarding, but you didn't do well in the beginning. What's it like having snow early, but knowing it's going to melt in a few days?
A little annoying, to be honest, because everything's dirty, and again, growing up in South Florida, coming up here, it was cool to see snow the first few times, but I'm not a fan, to be honest. I much prefer my South Florida winters where I can still get out and play some basketball and golf and stuff, but it was definitely a story I'll always have, being in Missoula for the 13.5 inches of snow in October. So that's something I'll always remember.
What was it like down in South Florida all year round?
Well, you didn't get snow.
Was the summer hot like Phoenix?
It did very different than Phoenix. So it's tough to explain the humidity, but it's like you walk out and you're just in soup, right? It's a completely different environment. So
how do you keep yourself warm during games? Like, I'd imagine you get cold during the 13.5 inches of snow.
Oh, it was freezing. I mean, I'm sitting there, my hands are freezing, so I'm trying to operate a camera with frozen hands. I'm trying to keep the camera dry. And, so I have a trash bag. That's how we keep the cameras dry, is a trash bag, which I look like, 2020's worst dressed out there. I'm in the trash bag with the camera, small hole cut out for the camera lens. It was miserable, but it's always cool seeing that kind of football and that kind of snow. I mean, the kids are just loving it. If I could actually just be a fan, it would be fantastic. It's an experience.
Yeah, weird question. Have you ever dropped the camera while you're operating it during a basketball game?
I guess that depends if my boss is listening or not. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Who was the worst person you've ever interviewed? Could be the most rude, most boring, things like that. I guess we could do that differently.
No, that's a good question. I gotta think. You have different kinds of bad interviews. You have interviews where you're like, I can't believe this person is saying this. Like, I can't believe how rude they are. And like you said, there are other people who just, they're not answering questions great. Yeah. There was a basketball player in Missouri, Willie Geist, who I did not get along with, and that might be because I didn't love playing against him. He would come out to the rec because he wasn't very good. He was like the end of the bench on the Missouri basketball team, so he would like to dominate us and come out onto the rec courts. Like
the people who didn't make the team in Missouri?
No, I'm talking about like he was on the team at the University of Missouri, but he didn't get any playing time. So, but he would still dominate when he came out to the rec center. Like, it's a bunch of college kids playing like rec ball, and he would dominate. And so I got on a team one day that we actually beat his team, and he didn't like that very much. And so he was pretty...
Whipped out the camera and interviewed?
What?
Whipped out the camera and interviewed him?
How
do you feel losing?
No, but he definitely recognized me later. He was not happy still.
Why do you interview the small people, though? Why do you interview smaller people than bigger, more recognizable people?
So it depends on... I interview both, but I always kind of say a story doesn't have to be because somebody's great at a sport. Some of the greatest stories in sports are of the little guy. That's what we love. We love rooting for an underdog. And, I'm going to talk to the superstar of the Montana football team or the guy that hit the game-winning shot for the basketball team or whatever. That's part of the job. But telling those underdog stories, that's what people love. I always say, and I was talking with you about this a little bit earlier, the greatest sports story ever told was Rudy. Rudy sucked as a football player. He made one tackle. They made a movie off of a guy who made one tackle.
And it was super successful.
Exactly. It was one of the greatest sports stories ever told. And so that's kind of the point, is you don't have to just have a great story. You don't have to be a great player. You just have to have a great story.
And who was the most famous person you've ever interviewed? Like, the biggest person nowadays?
Oof, that's a great question. I covered Michael Porter Jr. in high school.
Ooh.
He's now on the Nuggets. Had a breakout bubble session. And I covered Drew Lock in college. I actually had a class with him too, but that's another story.
You can talk about that.
It was a weird class. The professor called him out on day one, and Drew was a freshman. He was going to be like the savior of the university, and he was super awkward teenage kid, and I felt bad for him. But those two guys in Missouri were really cool. And then I covered a tennis tournament in China as well.
Ooh.
And so I talked to Rafa Nadal and Serena Williams, and I had a one-on-one with Anna Radzwanka, who's a famous tennis player, and Carlos Suarez Navarro, who's another famous tennis player. So those would be some of the biggest press conferences / interviews I've had.
What are the pros and cons of interviewing? Like, I could imagine a few pros, like being able to go to free basketball games for the Montana Grizzlies, but also not seeing your family or your girlfriend or things like that.
So, you kind of talked about it. That's exactly it. Like, there are pros and cons to every job. The pros of my job is it's awesome. I love what I do. And, I've talked about it. I love what I do. I don't work a day. It's awesome. But there are weird hours, and there's some sacrifices that have to be made. I work most weeks Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 1 to 11 p.m. So I have a girlfriend that works Monday to Friday, 7 to 3 p.m. I don't see her during the week. I see her Tuesday, Wednesdays, afternoons, and Saturday, Sunday mornings sometimes. So it's tough, on a social life. Plus, I haven't had a holiday off in 2.5 years. I haven't had a Christmas off. I haven't had a Thanksgiving off, a 4th of July off. I don't see family for those. I don't go home for those. So, people don't realize that we're really here because we love it. And we do make a lot of sacrifices for it. And I would kind of tell people, if you're going into media, you're going to be making some sacrifices.
That sounds like... it sounds like it's fun, but I can definitely see the pros and cons. What was your, or what brand do you use for electronics? Apple or Android?
I'm an Apple guy through and through.
I 100% agree.
I'm the Apple phone. I connect it with my Mac, so I'm texting off my Mac.
Same here.
iPad, iWatch, if I could get it. I don't have an iWatch yet, but it's on the bucket list.
Yeah. What is your favorite sport to interview people with?
I'm going to kind of go back to tennis. I've had the experience with tennis players in the past, covering the Beijing, the China Open. And it's just a sport that I understand better. And, that's why, commentators normally commentate on the sports they played, right? Because they just understand it better. Randy Moss being a guy for Rex Ryan, Troy Aikman, Tony Romo, they all talk football, right? A-Rod, Kurt Schilling, Pete Rose, they talk baseball. You could go into basketball, Dwayne Wade, Paul Pierce, Shaquille O'Neal, they all talk basketball. Tennis was my number one sport. It was my first sport. It was a sport that I loved growing up, and I could obviously talk enough about football or baseball or basketball. I love those too. But I just was always a little bit on another level mentally of tennis. And so that's kind of, I like talking with tennis players about that. They also kind of appreciate the coverage a little bit more because it's not as popular as football. Or, you talk to Dalton Snead or Dante Olson, every media member's trying to talk to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk with Olivia Osterbahn, who just made the finals at an ITF event in California, who's playing on the Montana women's tennis team. She appreciates that a lot more. It's not something, an opportunity she gets all that often.
Yeah. Okay, we're moving into the last few questions. What is your hot take?
So I have a weird one on this. So, Peeps, the marshmallows with sugar on them.
Yes, every Easter.
Every Easter they're out there. I love them, but I only love them when you roast them over a bonfire.
That's very specific.
Yeah, so what happens is the sugar caramelizes and the marshmallow inside melts, and it just creates this awesome little coating for it. And that's my hot take.
That seems like a very weird hot take.
I've thought about this a lot, CJ.
Yeah. What is your favorite fast food chain? Could be in Missoula, could be nationwide, could be worldwide.
Does Chick-fil-A count as fast food?
Sure, I guess.
They have too good of milkshakes to say anything else than
Are
Chick-fil-A.
you? So you're not an In-N-Out. You'd rather have...
I've never had an In-N-Out.
Oh my gosh. Those are the best burgers ever. I'm more of a Five Guys person.
Is that fast food now too?
I don't know.
It's more like medium food. That's like in the Chipotle level of food, right?
I don't know.
It's kind of in that middle. Like, I don't know what to do with those restaurants. Is it fast food? Moe's, Chipotle, Five Guys Noodles, those places.
Noodles and Company, yeah.
Exactly. They're not fast food, but they're not slow food either, so.
What's your favorite type of food? Could be genre.
That's a great question. I love Italian. I love my pastas. That's... I love cooking, and I'll make some steaks and some chickens, but like...
That was about to be my next question. Do you make your food, or do you buy it?
Oh, I make my food. I love to cook. If I wasn't going to be in journalism, one of my backup options was actually going to culinary school and being a chef. Or, even more so, the real option was actually going to pastry school and being a baker. I love to bake.
Oh my gosh.
I love it. It's...
Cakes.
I'm not more of a cake guy. I do great cookies. I do cake balls.
What about cookie cake?
I've not made a cookie cake yet, but now that you mention it, I think I'm going to try it.
Yeah, cookie cakes are awesome. You kind of answered my question, but other than sports reporter, what as a child was your backup plan? What were you planning on doing?
I really knew from the age of 5 or 6 that I wanted to go into sports reporting, so it wasn't like I gave a lot of thought into it, but the two things that I really thought about otherwise were things that I've mentioned, were... I have a psychology degree. I'd love to use it. Going into psychology was always another option for me. I love working with people, and I love, finding out what makes them tick, and that's psychology. And then, baking or cooking. I love working in a kitchen, and so those would be kind of the other options.
What was your strongest subject as a student? Could be math, science.
I was always a math geek. I love. See, the issue with math is that you think you have to be great at calculus and statistics, and I was horrible at calculus. But again, being a psychology major, it's actually mostly statistics. I was almost a half stats major in college, and I love the numbers, and I can do a lot of the number calculations in my head, which is part of the reason I also love sports, is I can calculate somebody's OPS and batting average, and not the QBR because that's subjective, but quarterback rating, and I can do a lot of that in my head, which is really cool.
Well, thank you for being on here, Kevin.
Oh, CJ, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, that will wrap up for the 13th official podcast of CJ Sports Network. Thank you guys for joining. You can go on to my social media at CJ Sports Network on Instagram, at CJ Sports Network on Twitter, and I will be getting a Facebook account soon. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. For now, bye.